Hi, Carla.
Hey there, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. It's just you and I right now. Oh, I just noticed I have the wrong date on here. I just have a few introductory slides that I wanted to go through and do an introduction before I hand the controls over to you. And then I'll be doing a poll at the end just to get a sense for the reactions people might have had to their specific data metrics or the information that you share with us today. If you want to stick around for that, that is fair game and you are more than welcome to. I just wanted to give you the choice.
Cool. So so I'll go and then are y'all like breaking out
No,
or
we'll
what is the
still stay.
plan? Okay.
Yeah, so after you present, everyone's going to stay in the big Zoom room and I'm going to launch a poll and give people an opportunity to do some reflective thinking on the information shared.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Awesome. Cool.
So this is the slide that I have for you to kick it over to you. And then afterwards, this is where individuals will go for the poll. And then this is a resource that I'll share with the audience. And then we'll do some reflection of some other data that we have from another report in Michigan.
Cool.
And looking at those, that information side by side. And then how can we help and next steps, and that's it.
Perfect. Great.
You are welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, so that sounds interesting. I had planned to stay, so yeah.
Okay.
I'll do
Great.
that.
Okay.
So yeah, my part should be probably maybe an hour. It might be a little less than an hour.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, then we may or may not go the full 90 minutes. And from what I gather, most people are okay with getting some time back in their day. So.
Right. Very true.
Yeah. And still just us. I am gonna see, I think we had a little over 30 registered last I checked. Check
Sounds
again.
pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pretty spread out across the schools?
Yes, it is.
That's great.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
everyone who's here is a school that participated, or are there others who didn't?
there might be a sprinkle of a few people who didn't participate, but still wanted to understand what things look like from a state perspective. So we might have a few of them join us, and we have 47 joining us today.
Nice. All right.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Rhonda.
Hey there, precious.
Hi, I'm actually Ashley. Rhonda invited me to this meeting.
Okay. Hi, Ashley. Pleasure of you to join us today.
Hi. She will be here soon, though, too.
Okay, great, great. Good afternoon to those who have logged into our Zoom room today. We'll be getting started in a few moments.
Rhonda's running a little late, but she's gonna listen through my phone because she's on the road. So whenever you guys are ready to start, we can get started.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I do have 2 o'clock on my end, but I see the number of participants increasing, so we'll wait just a couple more minutes before we dive in today. All right, everyone. I am anxious to begin. I am so looking forward to this today's webinar, and I thank you all for joining me this afternoon. My name is Precious Miller. I am the coordinator of MyVest with Michigan Center for Student Success, and it is a pleasure to present this webinar to all of you as we talk about students and economic stability. Our conversations will be facilitated by Trellis Research. They will be sharing the data from Michigan as it pertains to the Student Financial Wellness Survey and the results for our state. Before we begin, I would be remiss if I did not highlight the individuals that I have the opportunity to work with that really make this work possible, Jenny Shanker, Erica Oriens, and Katie Girardello. We make up the Michigan Center for Student Success and are honored to be able to support the work, the amazing work that happens at community colleges every single day. And we would love some engagement in the chat, but also on Twitter. So if you are in the world of Twitter and want to follow along with us, you can do so there. But we can also engage here in our chat room. So if there's some information that is shared from our facilitator today that really resonates with you, or if there's some data shared that was also true for the data set that you received, feel free to add that in the comment section. Maybe you have a question that you want to share. You can feel free to add that in the comments as well. If you wouldn't mind renaming yourself, as we will be doing some conversation at the end of our webinar today, that would give us an opportunity to know exactly what campus you are with and representing today. So you can go ahead and rename yourself by clicking on the participants list, highlighting your name, and then changing your name to reflect your institution. And with that, I want to set the stage for Carla from Trellis Research. She is the Senior Research Analyst, and she has been an amazing support and partner with launching the Student Financial Wellness Survey and ensuring that everyone was able to receive the results yesterday. So if you all wouldn't mind just giving your attention to Carla as she begins to share the results from the Student Financial Wellness Survey. So I am stopping my screen share and giving the controls over to Carla. Thank you so much, Carla.
All right, thank you, Precious. So let me put this in presenting mode. There we go. So thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to talk today about the survey findings. And thank you to MyBest for their help getting the participants on board, and to everyone here who's participated in the survey. We really appreciate your time and your help and everything that you've put into to the survey, and so we can get these great findings and really understand more about students and what they are going through right now. So the results I'm going to present today, like Precious said, are for all of the Michigan schools combined into an aggregate group. And hopefully you all received your school's report yesterday, or at least my contact at the institution should have received an email from me. So that can hopefully get passed around to whoever needs to see it. We're also working on a one-page infographic that features some of the survey's findings, and we're putting those together for each school right now. And I will get those out to my contacts at the schools as soon as they are ready, probably within the next week or so. So let's get into the survey. So the table on this slide shows the survey metrics for all of the Michigan community colleges. We sent survey invitations to almost 95,000 Michigan students and received responses from 10,610 students. And that's a response rate of 11.2%, which is excellent. The overall survey response rate was 9.7%. So the Michigan schools outperformed that average, which is great. The overall, there were 4 Michigan schools with response rates above 20%, which is really good for social science research like this. Gogebic, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, and Glen Oaks both had rates of 24%, and Montcalm and West Shore had rates of 21%. Really very, very good. We're super happy with that. On almost all of the slides that follow this, you'll see frequencies for the Michigan responders and frequencies for all community college responders as sort of a comparison group. And that comparison group is made up of 46 schools with more than 27,000 responders. And so the rest of the presentation here is broken out into 6 sections. I will show you the results of questions related to each section's theme. And then at the end of each section, I will tell you about how schools have used that information at their schools for different programs and processes. And then the last 2 of the 6 sections were new to the survey in fall 2020. So the research to practice section for those are just our suggestions, since schools haven't actually been able to use that information yet. So let's get started with student financial security. So financial wellness challenges are common among post-secondary students, as I'm sure everybody is well aware. Besides the emotional toll of financial insecurity, students surviving on narrow margins are more vulnerable to academic disruptions caused by unexpected expenses or erratic revenue. So this group of questions examines what students are worrying about, how confident they are about paying for college, and how precarious their finances are. So one of the questions we ask students is if they have a bank account. People who don't have a bank account may be more likely to turn to risky and expensive financial products like check cashing services or payday lending. And having a bank account provides a secure place to keep money and can make it easier to save money to be able to weather a financial emergency. So as you can see, most Michigan respondents did have some kind of a bank account, but 20% of them only had a checking account and not a savings account. So that may be something to keep in mind. And this was pretty similar to the overall community college respondents group, but more Michigan students had savings accounts compared to the wider community college population. And we asked students if they worry about having enough money to pay for school, and 70% of Michigan community college students agreed or strongly agreed that they do worry. And this was almost identical to the overall community college response. We also found that respondents who agreed or strongly agreed that they worry about having enough money to pay for school were more likely to be female. Just about half of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that they knew how they would pay for college next semester, but a quarter said they did not know. And now this survey was run in October and November, so the next semester was not far away. So the fact that a quarter of respondents didn't know how they were going to pay for it sounds a little bit worrisome. And so we asked if they would have trouble getting $500 in cash or credit, because we know that for some students, a relatively small expense can force difficult decisions about staying in college for those who are financially vulnerable. And a lot of students said that they would have trouble getting just $500 for an emergency in the next month. And students who said they would have trouble getting that amount of money for an emergency were also more likely to say that they worried about having enough money to pay for school, and they were more likely to be under 25 years old. Half of respondents at Michigan community colleges said that they worry about being able to pay their current monthly expenses. And those who were worried about this were also more likely to say they were worried about having enough money to pay for school. So you can kind of hear that a lot of these questions correlate together, where students who are having financial issues in one way tend to be having it in other ways as well. About a third of Michigan students said that they did not run out of money in the past year. And that was, the question was phrased as, did you run out of money, with that meaning that you didn't have enough money to pay your current monthly expenses. But 2/3 said that they had at least one time in the past year, and more than a quarter of Michigan respondents reported running out of money 5 or more times in the past 12 months. And those who said they ran out of money 5 or more times were also more likely to say they would have trouble getting $500 in case of an emergency, and that they worry about having enough money to pay for school. And they were less likely to know how they will pay for college next semester. And we asked respondents how often they had to borrow money from family or friends in the past year. And 41% said that they had not, but over half had borrowed at least one time. And a third of Michigan respondents had done so at least 3 times. So it's at least somewhat common. And that was very similar to the overall community college population as well.
Carla?
Yeah.
A question just came through in the chat. Could you clarify what percentage of public 2-year colleges were from Michigan?
It's out of all of our community college respondents. Yeah, it was a significant chunk. So we had, what did I say earlier? We had 46 community colleges in the study. So 22 of them were from Michigan.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah. So here we ask about if they feel like their total amount of debt is overwhelming, and that's not just student loan debt or debt related to college, but any debt at all combined together. And 42% of Michigan respondents said that the total debt that they have at the time that they were answering the survey was overwhelming. Now, with this information from questions about student financial security, institutions have looked at instances when they have interactions with students to see if there are ways to incorporate information on financial literacy. So if there are touch points when a school knows that they will interact with a student, that may be an instance where they could try to use that touch point for some of this information. So for example, some schools include some form of financial literacy or financial coaching for students who are at risk of losing student aid because of SAP issues, because of, what does SAP stand for? Satisfactory academic progress issues. And so this may be particularly important if a student has loans, because they will continue to have those loans no matter what their GPA is or whether or not they are enrolled. But it's also just a point in time when you know you have that student and you can kind of have them do some things to get back into good standing. So just times like that where you know you're going to have an interaction with a student might be good times to look at where you might interject some information that could help that student. Schools have also used the information to develop baseline metrics to assess various campus resources and interventions. They've also designed processes to help students financially plan their degree, looking at long-term plans to pay for their degree, just like they would plan out the classes that they need to earn that degree. Oops, I'm sorry. I accidentally pushed the wrong button. Institutions have also developed emergency aid programs to help keep those students enrolled who find themselves on the brink of economic instability when faced with a relatively low cost emergency. So if a student has an issue with their car that they don't immediately have the money for, a school could step in and help meet that cost and keep that student enrolled in school. And for the school, it's a relatively low cost. For the student, it may be a make or break cost for them. Some schools have also started doing what is known as poverty training with their staff and faculty. This training provides staff and faculty with information about the impact of poverty on students, strategies to break poverty barriers, and information about resources that may be able to help students. So making more of the school's employees aware of the realities that some students face and of the resources available makes it more likely that students will receive assistance. If only a handful of people on campus are aware of what resources are available, then it's much less likely that that information will make its way to the students who need it. So that's sort of that broad stroke, just letting everybody on campus know about it can be a good thing. This information has also led to some institutions helping get students enrolled in safer financial services products, like checking and savings accounts, rather than using things like auto title loans or payday lending. All right, so the next section, we're going to look at paying for college and student debt. So paying for college often involves piecing money together from a variety of sources, including grants, family support, personal income, savings, loans, other things. This next section shows questions from the survey that explores attitudes around student loans, financial knowledge, and risky borrowing. So this question gets at the variety of resources that students use to pay for college. The most commonly used method was personal savings at the Michigan schools anyway, with 65% saying that they use this to pay for college. And almost as many said that they use current employment, and 56% used Pell Grants or other grants. And then around a third or a little over a third used scholarships, student loans, support from parents, or credit cards. And 5% used parent loans and 2% used veterans benefits. So as we go through the rest of this section, we will dive further into student debt, credit card use, other types of credit, and working while enrolled. Many respondents feel that they have more student loan debt than they expected to. Almost 2/3 of Michigan students and community college students overall felt this way. And many students are also not confident that they'll be able to pay off their student loans. Nearly 3/4 of Michigan students and community college students overall were not at all confident or only somewhat confident that they could pay off the loans. Only 27% of Michigan respondents were confident or very confident that they could. Now, whether or not students accurately know how much debt they have or how likely it will be that they'll pay off their loans, what this question and the one before it shows really is their state of mind. They're worried about this debt. They don't know what kind of impact it's going to have on their life, and it makes them concerned. So on that first slide that we saw in the section that showed the resources for paying for school, we saw that almost 1/3 of respondents said that they used a credit card to pay for school, which can be a lot, depending on if they get that paid off in a timely way. They may or may not have fees or interest build up. This question asks if they have used a credit card for anything, not just to pay for school. And about half of the students, of the Michigan respondents and community college students overall, said that they had used a credit card at some point in the past 12 months. And much smaller percentages of students had borrowed a payday loan or an auto title loan. Those who said they'd used a credit card in the past 12 months mostly pay their credit card bill on time, 80% of the Michigan responders, but only 35% of those using a credit card say they fully pay off their balance each month. Half of the Michigan credit card users disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, "I fully pay off my credit card balance each month." So a lot of students are seeing that interest compounding and maybe even getting some fees. And many students are also using their credit card for things they didn't have the money for. 41% of Michigan responders said that they used their credit card for something they didn't have the money for in the past month at least 5 times. And 79% of Michigan responders did so at least once. Now, looking at auto title loans, the vast majority of the survey responders who borrowed an auto title loan did so only once in the past year. And I think overall there were about 600 responders who had borrowed an auto title loan. So, it's a small percentage of the students, but still some are doing this. Now, when we look at payday loans, they're used differently than the auto title loans. 1/4 of Michigan students who borrowed a payday loan in the past year did so 5 or more times in that year. We also use a 3-question scale. It's called a Lusardi scale to gauge their financial knowledge, just to try to get a handle on, do they understand finances well enough? Because it kind of plays into their use of those risky products. And the questions in the scale that we use generally are about interest accumulation. And you can see that 20% of Michigan responders answered all 3 questions correctly, and 20% didn't answer any correctly. And it corresponds really well with the general public 2-year knowledge. So, some students understand interest, some don't, and it's just kind of mixed results. And we ask if they work for pay while they're enrolled. And we're running this survey while they're in the fall semester. So it's at that time, 75% of Michigan responders said that they were working for pay. And we also asked them if they consider themselves to be students who work or workers who are going to school. And a slim majority of Michigan students and community college students overall consider themselves to be students who work. But a large percentage consider themselves to be workers who are going to school. And then we also asked about the number of hours that they work per week. And 1/3 of Michigan responders reported working at least 40 hours per week. And another 43% work somewhere between 20 and 39 hours per week. So a lot of students working some pretty good hours there. With the information from the questions related to debt, credit, and paying for college, institutions have informed the instructional design of student loan counseling and financial education interventions. So knowing that students are worried about being able to pay off their debt, or that they're using payday loans with some frequency, or that they're using credit cards for things they don't have the money for, Those kinds of information can help guide the topics that you might cover in an intervention. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Institutions have also looked at their own policies and procedures related to student payments, collections, and debt products with a new eye on how those are used or understood by students and how they may impact students. So understanding more about your students' relationship with various forms of credit and debt may help guide how to approach students about payments or loans that they owe to the school. And just like we saw in the last section, it can be helpful for students to financially plan for their degree. But in this case, it's a financial plan for how to repay those loans. So having a plan, understanding what it may be like, may help students feel less worried about that. And institutions have also researched where payday lenders or auto title lenders are located around campus or around where students live, which gives them more awareness of what's out there and what may be enticing students who are in a financial bind. And then along those same lines, institutions have also used this information to look at ways to help students get into those safer financial services and avoid the riskier products. All right, so in this next section, we'll look at student perceptions of institutional support. So feeling like their college understands them and their financial situation can contribute to a sense of belonging for students, and a feeling of belonging has been linked to greater retention. And student perceptions of institutional support can be telling indicators of whether your students intend to return to your institution or maybe try someplace else if they don't feel understood or heard. A little over a third of Michigan responders agreed or strongly agreed that their school is aware of the financial challenges they face, while almost a third disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. And you can see that it's similar to the public two-year overall, and in other sectors, we see this as well, that there's a pretty even split between agree, strongly agree, disagree, strongly agree, and then a neutral in the middle. So there's a fair number of students who just have no idea if their school is aware of their challenges. And we see the same breakdown when we ask if they feel like their faculty understands their financial situation. Again, a little over a third agree or strongly agree, where almost a third disagree and strongly disagree. Michigan responders most commonly reported talking to a financial aid advisor about their financial struggles, 47%, and 41% reported speaking to an academic advisor, 21% reported speaking to a faculty member. So a number of students are talking to faculty about their issues as well. Very small percentages said they talked to a financial coach or student affairs staff person, and 38% said they hadn't spoken to anybody about their financial struggles at their school, or at least none of these categories that they had there. And we ask a series of questions about if they feel like their school makes certain things more affordable or not. And a majority of Michigan responders agreed or strongly agreed that their school makes tuition more affordable, 59%. They were less prone to share this positive view regarding required class supplies, food, housing, transportation, and textbooks. Textbooks is kind of a special one. It's a common concern of students that many classes require textbooks that are too expensive and rarely used. So we pretty much with every school I've ever seen, we see textbooks as having the highest rate among that brown or tan disagree or strongly disagree column. And you can see in this case, 44% of Michigan responders disagreed or strongly disagreed that their school makes textbooks more affordable. Most students do, however, feel that their school has the support services that they need to help them address their financial situation. 10% disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. And we have a question in the survey that can be used to create a Net Promoter Score. So a Net Promoter Score is a customer satisfaction rating that can be used to understand how students perceive their institution. And it's actually used across all kinds of different industries, products, businesses, services. So it can be readily compared even outside of higher ed, and it's grounded in extensive research. A positive value is generally considered to be good, and the highest performers score a 50 or higher. So at about 28 here, the Michigan colleges are doing very well. And as you can see by the public two-year sector value, students tend to love their community college. We don't see rates this high within other sectors. Community colleges are special. So with this information about students' perceptions of institutional support, institutions have developed strategies to communicate with students about the realistic costs of education and the work that the institution has done and is doing to address their financial challenges. So this past year during the outbreak, probably all schools changed how they communicate with students and what they communicate about. But even before the outbreak, institutions were reconsidering their communications. So, I'm sure every school is doing things in the background to try to help their students with their financial challenges, but they may not make it very obvious what they're doing. But the more students understand about what their school does to try to help them, the more they feel supported and heard. So it's a good thing to get that information out there. And institutions have also worked to reduce some of the supplemental costs of education, like those textbook costs. Working on an issue like that and communicating it to students can show them that you understand their concerns. And again, training faculty and staff about the financial situations that many students face can help them be more aware, to know the resources that can help to get that information to the students. As we saw, students are going not only to their financial aid staff or advisors with their financial issues, but also faculty. So they're definitely part of the equation. And institutions have reevaluated how they message affordability. So the example given here on the slide is that a school blasts out a communication about freezing tuition and they brand that as making the school more affordable, but that may come across as insensitive to students who are facing daily financial struggles and have trouble paying their regular monthly expenses. So if many of that school's students are struggling, then touting a tuition freeze may not sound as positive as the school thinks it will. All right, so let's go into some basic needs. Students who struggle with basic needs like nutrition, safe shelter, transportation, they'll have a more difficult path to earning a degree. These struggles make it really difficult to focus on schoolwork, so it's important that students can address those so that they can really focus and make sure that they can remain enrolled and get their degree. So for food security, we used a 6-question scale from the US Department of Agriculture. Low food security is defined by them as reports of reduced quality, variety, or desirability of diet. And low food security is defined as reports of multiple indications of disrupted eating patterns and reduced food intake because of the inability to afford food. So among the Michigan respondents, 21% were categorized as having low food security, and another 21% were categorized as having very low food security. Those with low or very low food security were more likely to say they would have trouble getting $500 in an emergency, and more likely to say they worry about having enough money to pay for school. Our survey uses a housing security scale developed by the Hope Center. The scale defines housing insecurity as a set of challenges such as the inability to pay rent or utilities or the need to move frequently. There's a whole list of questions that we asked for this scale. Among the Michigan respondents, 44% were identified as housing insecure at some point in the previous 12 months. Among the broader community college respondents, it was even worse at 51%. Respondents who are housing insecure were more likely to be female and more likely to be enrolled part-time. And they were also more likely to say they would have trouble getting $500 in an emergency and more likely to say they worry about having enough money to pay for school. And then we also use a homelessness scale that was developed by the Hope Center. And it defines a homeless person as a person without a place to live, often residing in a shelter, an automobile, an abandoned building, or outside. And this one also has a scale. So we asked them if they had been homeless in the past year or since they've been enrolled. And then we also ask if they've, lived in a variety of different situations. And so if they had lived in those situations, they may not consider themselves to be homeless, but we would consider them to be homeless if they had lived in their automobile for a while. So we found that 15% of Michigan respondents reported experiencing homelessness at some point while enrolled. And respondents who were homeless were more likely to say that they would have trouble getting $500 in case of an emergency, and more likely to say they worry about having enough money to pay for school. And we asked students about their use of public assistance. So connecting students to these resources became even more important this past year during the COVID-19 pandemic. 22% of Michigan respondents reported receiving food assistance and medical assistance, same percentage. 38% received unemployment assistance, and then much smaller percentages of students reported receiving housing assistance, utility assistance, or childcare assistance. And with this information about basic needs, schools have developed a variety of emergency support services for students facing financial struggles, including things like food pantries, temporary housing, transportation assistance, and emergency aid programs. Institutions have also made campus resources known to students in a more high-profile way to try to destigmatize the use of the resources. So by broadly advertising the availability of resources, students aren't being singled out to receive this information, and schools can feel more confident that students who need the information are more likely to see it rather than relying on someone noticing that they're struggling and telling them about it, or relying on students to know where to look for that. And institutions have helped students get connected to public benefits. Students may sometimes not even know what they're eligible for or what programs are out there. And even if they are aware of the resources, they may feel overwhelmed or confused about the application process. So sometimes help with that can be what students need. And calling back to the idea of destigmatizing, some schools have encouraged faculty to put campus basic needs resources in the syllabus. This helps get information out there without calling a lot of attention to it and without singling students out. And it's an easy place for students to reference if they need to find the information. Some schools have also tried to provide low price healthy food options at on-campus dining areas. And some institutions have also started developing a student support team that can work with students in a case management fashion, looking holistically at the students to help them with their basic needs. So for some students, their basic needs struggle may be temporary and limited. And so maybe something like receiving food from a food pantry or some emergency aid is what they need to get back on track. But for other students, their basic needs and security may be more pervasive, and simply providing them with that one item of help isn't enough, and they need kind of a more holistic process to help get them back on track. So let's now look at one of our new sections, the impact of COVID-19. We added these questions about the pandemic to try to capture how students and their families experience the emotional and economic toll. And we'll start with a question about, this actually is a question that we've had for a while, but it relates directly. So we asked them if they provide financial support for any of the following individuals. And so you can see that many community college students are financially supporting other people. Among the Michigan respondents, 16% provide support to spouses, 26% to a child or children, 16% to parents, and 12% to other family members. And so then with the COVID-19 questions, we asked if they have more of an obligation to support their family financially compared to before the outbreak. And 51% of Michigan respondents agreed or strongly agreed with that statement. And unfortunately, many students reported that their family's financial situation was worse at the time that they were completing the survey compared to before the pandemic. 55% said it was worse, 27% said it was unchanged, and 14% just didn't know their family's finances. Only 4% said that it was better. And we asked about how students' work situation changed compared to before the pandemic. 37% said that their personal work and income situation had not changed, but similar percentages of respondents said that they had fewer work hours and less income, and 22% said that they had lost a job. And most survey respondents across across all sectors reported that the pandemic added to their levels of stress, anxiety, or depression, 86% among both the Michigan respondents and the community college students overall. Now, because these questions are new, we don't have schools who have had the opportunity to act upon the information yet, but we do provide some research to practice suggestions in our report, and so I'll share those here. Institutions can look at the design and delivery of various institutional programs that help students address the impacts of COVID-19, such as maybe help with economic struggles or health issues. And on that note, institutions can provide students with mental health support and maybe even physical health support for those who may have health issues following infection. And institutions can help students meet their basic needs and train staff to identify insecurity, as we've discussed in other sections. With the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's definitely in play that students are having trouble with their basic needs, probably more so than they were before. And schools can provide emergency aid to students who are having financial struggles that may impact their ability to remain enrolled. All right, so then we also added some questions about technology security. We were interested to find out what technology students had access to and if they felt that it was sufficient to complete their coursework. So you can see that almost all Michigan respondents reported that they use a laptop for their college coursework, with many also saying that they use a smartphone. For some reason, I can't imagine doing coursework on a smartphone, but that must be maybe answering emails and things. Less than half of respondents use a desktop computer and only 22% use a tablet. 80% of Michigan respondents and community college overall agree or strongly agree that they can access their device for coursework anytime they need it. Now, this question was only asked of those who reported that they use at least one device for coursework. So of those who said they had a device, 10% said they could not access it anytime they needed it. And respondents who said this, that they couldn't access it when they needed it, were more likely to report having low or very low food security and more likely to report having housing insecurity. Most respondents, about 3/4, are also confident or very confident that their devices will be reliable. 23% are only somewhat confident and only 4% are not confident at all. And most respondents also reported that they have reliable access to the internet all of the time or some of the time. Only 3% of respondents said they don't have reliable internet access at all. So overall, students seem to have the technology that they need and the internet access that they need in general, but there are some students who seem to have some issues that they haven't worked out, at least at the time that they were completing our survey. And again, with this being a new section, these are just our suggestions that we include in the report. And I think that institutions have probably tackled maybe all of these suggestions at this point, since they kind of were thrown into a virtual environment. So we're definitely interested to hear if institutions get any information out of this section that is actionable for them, or if it's just sort of a confirming, like, yes, students seem to be okay and we've mostly addressed this. So we feel that schools can evaluate the technology needs of their students and provide help with things like laptop rentals, wireless router rentals, or installing routers in parking lots for students to use. I think a lot of schools have already done that anyway. Institutions can also partner with internet providers for students who are having trouble with their internet or it's too expensive to help get them low-cost options. And institutions can cross-train faculty and staff about online technologies to make sure that they're able to use them effectively and help students who may be having some trouble. And then lastly, we are about to start recruiting for the fall 2021 survey. So if your school would like to participate, please let me know and we will put you on our list. And if you find the information valuable and you know colleagues at other institutions who may benefit from this type of information, please spread the word. You can give them our information. I'm going to put my contact information on the next slide, or you can tell us about them, whatever works. We would love to have as many institutions in the survey as possible. We think this information is very valuable to institutions, and we would love to have just as many as possible participate in it. And so here is my email address. I've also put the name and email of Aaron Nisnik, who is a recently hired researcher at Trellis. He will be taking on a lot of the recruitment activities. So if you do participate, you may be seeing his name and corresponding with him. So I just wanted to make that known. And then also please follow us on Twitter at Trellis Research for updates on our research. And thank you so much for your time and participation in the fall 2020 survey. We would love to hear how you guys are going to use it or are using it. We're always interested in hearing about that. So I'll try to check in with schools occasionally to learn about that, but I'm always happy for you to drop me a line as well. So, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat at this time. While those thoughts are ruminating, Carla, I just wanted to again thank you for sharing this information with us. Even though you shared the PowerPoint slides with me, I still ended up taking lots of notes just because there are things that I didn't think about last week that came up again today. The PowerPoint slide that Carla shared will be posted on our website by the end of the day today. So you can access her slides there if that would be of interest to you. And I am going to finish out our workshop together with a few things before we end. I see a question that just came through the chat. Carla, do you see a lot of variation across colleges? Could you share more?
Yes, we definitely do. I would say it's more related to their sector, but even within sectors, there can be a lot of variation. Just the student populations can be so different at different colleges. So we'll see some schools where, for example, a very large percentage of students are caring for children, like half of them, and then some where it's like 1%. And that can make a difference in other areas too, with their finances and kind of how all of that interconnects. So yeah, there can be some pretty big differences between colleges, but it does seem pretty related to their sectors. Like the private four-year sector, for example, has a very different population than the community colleges.
Carla, I was curious to know, how often do you think it would be recommended for institutions to use and give this survey?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've seen schools do like every other year. We have some schools who do it every year. It sort of depends on the institution's goals. Like the ones who do it every year, we've seen them put it into their sort of like campus goals where they're tracking things. And so they want to keep track of that every year. And then for others, it's, they worry more about survey fatigue, or they have other survey projects that they kind of schedule around. So they make sure they're not sending too many to students. So it kind of just depends on those sort of factors that you want to think about. But we definitely have some schools that do every year, some that do every other year. There might be other variations on that I'm not aware of. I think those are the most common ones.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Is there any possibility for inserting a limited number of school identified questions into the survey?
That is a great question. At this time, we're not doing that because this is a free service that we do as part of our community investment at Trellis. And we provide this survey to dozens of schools. So we just don't really have the capacity right now to have sort of differences for every school. But that would be, I would love to be able to do that at some point.
Sure. Carla, are there opportunities to disaggregate the data by race, gender, or age?
There are opportunities. So for schools who are interested, we can do some limited ad hocs on their own data. So, just like send it my way and we can talk it through and sort of schedule that in. But we've done that for schools before who are interested in specific things like that, where we can kind of run things using certain variables.
Mhm. And Carla, could you share what opportunities exist for institutions to connect with you to talk more specifically about their data?
Yes, absolutely. We are very happy to do presentations just like this, where you can set up, we can set up a meeting with whoever you want at your institution, and I will run through your school's results with your institution and whoever you want involved in that presentation. And we're happy to do that anytime. So just contact me and we can get that scheduled.
Okay, great. Carla, would you mind popping your email in the chat for individuals who might be interested in connecting with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. These are great questions coming through in the chat. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to continue to add them as we move through our conversations today. So I am interested in doing some reflective thinking around the information that Carla had shared. So we are going to navigate a poll through menti.com. The code that you see listed on this slide is the code that you will use when you go to the website menti.com, MENTI. If you are technologically savvy and want to do this the cool way, you can use your phone and pull up the camera and hold the camera next to the black and white icon on the screen, and it should take you directly to the poll that we're going to be using. So I am going to navigate away from the PowerPoint now and go to the Menti polling. And this is the first question once you get to menti.com. The code again is 61805017. And let me share my screen. Okay, so the first question is reflecting on the technology needs of students. Carla said that this was an area that is new to the Trellis survey. So I just wanted to get a sense of whether or not the data from the technology section is information that is new to you, and if there's any information that you are able to put into action now that you have the survey results, or if this is something that you had already taken care of or addressed with your students. Hotspots, new to me. Already done, okay. Already addressed, not new. Hotspots, hotspots. Already done. Loaner laptops being addressed. Phone use to consider. Jenny's comment about a lot of students using their phone and research showing that a lot of students are able to successfully use their phone to complete coursework. That was new to me. Thank you for sharing that, Jenny. Grant funding being addressed, unsurprising, but sad. These are good. Anxiety, scared. New to me, reliable internet. Okay, thank you guys for sharing. Okay, thank you, Joe, for clarifying. Okay, let's see if we can navigate to the next polling question. Oh, and you guys are right on top of it. Did any of the data shared surprise you? If so, in what way? No, not really. Most students pay for classes with own money. It wasn't a surprise. It's confirming. Yeah, surprised to see how many students didn't know how they would pay for the next semester or if they would be able to pay off their loans. It seems so brave to register anyway. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like students just get the vision of what could be in the future that allows for them to be resilient and go for it anyway. Confirmation. Mhm. I was really surprised about the number of female students who experience, what was it, housing insecurity. 44% of students are have insecure housing. That was interesting to me. Okay, let's go to the next question. Did any of the results shared confirm what was already suspected about students? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. Yes, but anecdotes need data. I hear that. And thank you, Carla, for being willing to go in the trenches and share the results. Housing and food insecurity confirmed, but now we have empirical data. Yes, yes, data is so helpful. Not aware of all resources. Okay, good. And our last question. What is one research to practice strategy you would like to see implemented on your campus? At the end of each section, I appreciated, Carla, for you sharing research to practice strategies. Did anyone stick out to any of you? Is there one strategy that you are really interested in implementing? Mental health assistance. Yeah, and really thinking outside the box of what mental health assistance could be. So is that in person? Is that virtual? How do we maintain that? More communication, encouraging students to talk with us about their financial needs. Yeah, financial planning. No wrong door for assistance. I love that. Understanding and supporting student parents. Financial planning. You know, the Hope Center has a lot of articles about supporting student parents, if that's of interest to any of you. College discounts for internet, credit union membership. Yes, how to help students navigate back to normal with assistance and support. Promoting safer financial products. Yes, I love that. Basic needs support and financial literacy. Can't choose. I hear you. Maybe, do we have to choose? I wonder. Can we do both? Okay. All right, that is the end of our reflective questions. Thank you all for participating. We are going to navigate back to the PowerPoint slide. There is a resource that I wanted to make sure was shared with everyone from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So I am navigating back to that. So starting tomorrow, the eligibility for food assistance is expanding to students who have a 0 EFC, but students who are also work study eligible. Food assistance is now an option for them if they qualify. Even if a student has work study and aren't necessarily participating in a work study experience, but still have that as their financial aid package, could be eligible for food assistance benefits. And that starts tomorrow. So if you have students who would now qualify for food assistance, students would need to go to MyBridges to be able to enroll and apply for those benefits. So I wanted to make sure that that information was shared with everyone. Now, even though food assistance is an area in which a lot of institutions have active supports and where some My Best practices have been centered around food assistance, I realized that there are other opportunities for us to consider additional ways that we could support students. And this was based off of the newly released ALICE data from Michigan Association of United Ways. So Michigan Association of United Ways had shared a lot of different things in their report. I'm trying to navigate to the chat so that I can put the link to the report in here for you all. Let's see. It is not coming up for me. Erica, is that something you could put in the chat? Yeah, okay.
Yep,
So,
I'll find it, Precious.
okay, thank you, Erica.
Yep.
So the Alice report, this is one of the graphs that talks about the financial needs of individuals in our community. And the report talks about the financial insecurity that all individuals who are asset limited and income constrained face. But I am wondering if some of that information overlaps with the information that we received from our Trellis data. So what overlaps might we be seeing is something that I'm interested in getting your information and your perspective on. And so one of the things from the report, the Alice report, is that childcare, transportation, housing are some of the biggest needs that individuals are facing. Are you guys seeing the same needs in your Trellis data? Are students saying that that childcare, transportation, and housing are needs for them? And you can put that in the chat. I'm also wondering if there are other barriers to student success that we haven't specifically talked about that we should begin talking about so that us as an association can better advocate for what would be helpful at the community colleges. So maybe if you are brave enough to unmute and share your thoughts, I welcome it. If you feel more comfortable putting those in the chat, that's also okay. I am just hoping to do a little dialogue around this topic. What are we missing? What's not being talked about? Do you see overlap in your Trellis data with this particular data set of childcare, transportation, and housing being critical needs for individuals in our communities? Anyone?
Precious, this is Erica. I'll share my husband and I were talking about this over when the report came out, and we were commenting on the food budget for a family of 4. If you take that $794 and think about 21 meals per person a week, I think if I remember correctly, we calculated it at about $2.50 a meal. Which when you think of a monthly meal budget of $794, it seems like a lot of money maybe, but when you break that down per meal, that's not a lot to work with when you're feeding young kids.
Yeah. And Carla has shared, again, going back to our female students being have insecure housing. I'm wondering, in what ways could we make sure that we are targeting supports to those students, if that is a need for your specific body of students. I know there are lots of variations to consider there. And if financial aid and advising are the main places in which students are voicing their financial concerns, how could we integrate housing and childcare and transportation resources in those specific departments? Seeing as we know from the Trellis data that a lot of students are sharing their financial challenges there. Lots of things to think about. So how can Michigan Center for Student Success better help your institution? How can we advocate for change? And what's not being talked about?
Mm-hmm.
Personally, this is Beverly Stambro, Oakland Community College. Personally, I think the Michigan Center for Student Success has done an awesome job in connecting us across the state of Michigan and bringing some of these things as well as other challenges that we may be facing individually, collectively together so that we could have some further discussion. It has not been in my history of working in community college that we've had so many resources and so much support that's out there. So the continuing to doing what you're doing and providing and really involving, in my opinion, our chancellor or our chief officers in these conversations as well, to make sure that employees are participating in all the events and activities that you're providing. It has been a wealth of knowledge, especially with the faculty conversations, because normally we're in silos and we're part of our community. But now being able to have other faculty talk to faculty across the state and create and bounce off ideas has been very, very helpful. So I would have to really reach to define what else you can do, but the data is a telltale for us. And based on what you provide for us has been very encouraging, and it allows us to have some crucial conversations that we would have not had the Michigan Center for Student Success not developed and create the work and the resources that you provide for us. So thank you.
Our pleasure, Ms. Bev. Thank you so much. Lorraine, I see your hand, followed by Paul.
Hi, everyone. I agree with what was just said. I intend to share this information with our student services team, primarily those who work in the call center who may hear concerns from students, as well as our academic advising team. And I also have a academic advising and student success advisory board made up of staff and faculty from across the campus that I will also share this information with. I particularly appreciate the messaging that this is a campus-wide issue and that everyone on the campus needs to be concerned about it and aware of it, and have some collaborative support for students. Putting something in syllabus, that's an excellent idea. So many good things coming out of this. So I appreciate all the work that MCCS is doing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Paul?
I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you for it. I guess my main idea would be that you should magically reframe investments in public investments in student support services at community colleges from a net cost to an important social investment. It'd be nice if everybody had robust supports in life, but I think even people who are suspicious of that may be friendly to the idea that community college students have put themselves on the launching pad, and it's a wonderful public investment to help them get into orbit. And that requires a little extra, but it's worth it. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing, Paul. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts, suggestions?
As me again, sorry.
Okay, I'm
As
comfortable.
I'm reflecting over the conversation and things like that, and then based on some of the comment that Paul made, you know, it's real important too when having conversations. Academics is separate from student. And when you look at the academics at community colleges, in my history, academics get all the attention, get all the support, get all the needs. Student services is that stepchild that may get certain things. So continuing to support the student service side of the house. The student services, we're asked to do so much with such little. And a lot of us are so committed to the well-being and the commitment of the student. They come to all of us for hope. But when they get into those classrooms, sometimes some of our faculty, and when we look at the institution, when we look at how we do our work and where the money is really put into, and don't get me wrong, I know academics need those funds, but we need to really, create that balance. Because without the student side of the house supporting the students, they won't be in those classrooms learning the knowledge in which our faculty have. So ways in which we could possibly help individuals understand the importance of putting money behind the student services side of the house, additional funds.
Beverly, I just want to second that because we're going through revamping our degree right now, our transfer degree. And there's a whole, I mean, I'm non-faculty and I'm on the student services side, and it's been a interesting battle of seeing that divide versus faculty and staff. And I see some head nods there when it comes to, like you said, that divide and enrollment's going down. Why aren't they hiring faculty? This retirement happened and they're unionized and we're not. And like you said, the money a lot of the time is spent on faculty, which again, I totally agree with what you're saying. But it puts us in a tough spot to be able to keep them in the seats with the declining enrollment. So any additional support to, I would say, bridge the gap or misconstruction between staff and faculty, because I do feel there's that tension at our institution, and I'm sure there is. It sounds like at others with what you said too, Beverly. So thank you for that, and I just wanted to kind of second that.
This is Kristen from OCC. I think one of the things we've been talking about also, hi Beth, this is the OCC show, and Erica, you have the cutest dog. I think one of the other things we talk about is really so cute. Retention has to extend to the classroom, right? I think faculty have to be a partner in retention if we're going to move the needle. It can't sort of be trying to lure the students that are going to classes to our student services, which are already overstretched, to try and get them to services, which is another referral. I just think having a more cohesive, connected system where faculty are partners in that, and they're on the front lines of noticing, through early alert or whatever it is, but how to really make a more cohesive process for the students, that there's not so many handoffs in trying to get them the support.
Totally agree on with that one.
This is great. Thank you, guys. So you guys must have seen my notes. It's a beautiful segue to talk about our upcoming events. One in particular that I am really looking forward to is about engaging faculty. And what does unification, what could that look like? What could partnership look like? And what could we accomplish if academic affairs and student affairs were aligned in one unit? That's going to be the heart behind the upcoming event, and you can find that on our website. Some additional next steps also include coaching with National Center for Inquiry and Improvement. I know some individuals have already had their coaching conversation with NCII, and I have gotten some really great feedback. So woohoo to those individuals who are off to the races, as they say. And if you have yet to schedule your coaching call, it's not too late. NCII has coaching times up to May. So if now is just not the best time for a coaching call, that is okay. You can schedule it in the months to come. We also have some brave and amazing and very capable MCSS mentors who may have touched base with some of you already and may be in the process of touching base with you in the future. And I always encourage some self-care, because these are uncharted times, uncharted waters, and I feel that we can give the best care to other people when we give the best care to us. If you have any questions for me, additional suggestions or things that haven't yet been discussed that you feel voice needs to be given to, you can feel free to email me and share those thoughts and ideas with me through email. I gladly accept them. Thank you all for the information that you shared with me today. I already have some thoughts going of ways that we can make sure that we are addressing the concerns, or just things that you want to be addressed, or how MCSS could better advocate for what's happening or not yet happening at your institution. I thank you again all for your time this afternoon. I give you some minutes back to your afternoon. I hope everybody's okay with that. The recording will be linked to our website in the coming days, along with the PowerPoint slides, which will be uploaded by the end of the day today. I wish you all the best as you venture forth in the rest of your Wednesday, and I hope you all well. Thank you. Bye-bye.